Hey guys.
Good evening, gentlemen.
So,
Hello.
So we get accused of being dry. So we figured we would embrace our inner dryness tonight. And tonight I have for you legal documents.
oh, fun.
We actually will read a little bit of the CFRs tonight. That's the US Code of Federal Regulations. I promise there's a reason for that because I am trying to make a point. So, do you guys have any?
What's the topic?
So, the topic tonight is DEI failures.
Wait a minute. We're kind of a red pill channel. Does this relate to red pill stuff?
Well, it involves a woman.
Oh, okay. Good enough for me.
We unfortunately for the women tonight, we are picking on you, and there's going to be a lot of people that do not like what I have to say. A lot of what I have to say will be viewed as controversial, not because it should be, but because we've been trained that it shouldn't be. Oh, okay. Tacticus. Yeah, we're probably in the space where YouTube won't. So yeah, I would just expect that.
Hey, it's the same time every week.
Right.
Set your own notification.
Defeat the Google. Yeah, so
sometimes the AI gets messed up.
Yeah. So tonight we are going to open the conversation. We won't end here. We're going to open with the Delta 4819 crash in Toronto earlier this year. Transport Canada is the investigating board on that primary, and they put out a preliminary report. And I have to now stress here that this is a preliminary. It is not the final report, and there are no accusations made in this report. It is actually this report is simply a readout of the evidence. This is, however, a legal document. This will be considered part of the legal investigation, so you can take it with a grain of trust that this is the direction that it's the transportation's TCSB, Transport Canada Safety Board, is going to take with this. So, for the record, I am in fact a pilot. So, I actually am qualified to talk about this, and I have to state that up front. People might not agree with the conclusions I come to, but the evidence is all sitting here. And one of the things I found fascinating reading this particular document was how much effort they put dancing around the fact that she's a she. In fact, it's like in the second paragraph, they start the dance. It's really kind of sad. So, have I properly introed, Steve?
I think so. It's amazing the amount of effort that goes into how to tell the story without holding any woman accountable.
Maybe
I'm getting ahead of myself here.
No, you're not. As I was reading this, as I was watching this, I was just flabbergasted. I couldn't believe that this happened. Because the mistakes that were made are mistakes that are taught. We're taught how to deal with them. Maybe not the first flight, but definitely by the second or third one. Like the first time you ever go up in an airplane. What's the most important part of taking an airplane off the ground?
Putting it back down.
Oh, wow. landing it again. Exactly. And again, the document dances around pretty hard, but they do have a readout of the flight data recorder, and they do list the actual actions that were taken. And there's a point where I'm going to say this action right here is where the accident actually occurred. Yeah, okay, the plane smacked the ground later, but the accident actually occurred here, and that is going to be a multifaceted failure of a lot of different things. So, okay, so the first thing I want to do is we're just going to show a quick little video, no sound. And in fact, when I first saw this, I intentionally watched with no sound. Okay, we're just going to watch. This is raw video from inside the flight deck of an airplane waiting to take off as this plane is landing. And Tacticus. Okay, yes, I should address this. There are a couple reasons why I'm not doing the chopper crash. One of them is military investigations are not subject to public disclosure laws, and so I have no hard data. Second, there's a lot less flight data recorded in that crash to begin with. So the investigation itself will be much more speculation. This investigation is going to be, it's a much better example of the same problem. So yes, I agree with you. I have my own opinions about that helicopter crash, which end up with she should have never been sitting in that on that flight deck. So, but we're going to look at the Delta one today because
lack of public
frankly,
record.
yeah. Well, we're going to be looking at the Delta one today because frankly, we've got better info to make the point with. And by the way, this idea has been banging around in our ideas folder for a while. We finally, I think we actually had the idea before the preliminary report came out. So, yeah, let's, so we're just going to watch this video here first. No sound. This is just the crash as it happened. Okay. This right here is the aircraft that's coming into land. And that's pretty much it. Crashes don't take very long to happen, but the actual point that the crash occurs is all the way back here. It's actually right about there. And you can see there, this is a pretty good shot of it. As we get into the timeline, you'll see why the crash occurs actually here. So, but that's it. That's the crash.
Hey,
And the other,
I got some questions for you.
Okay.
At this moment in time, is the airplane over the runway?
Yes. This, so if you can see this yellow line and these markers are the barrier point where airplanes are supposed to stay outside of to wait to enter a runway.
Okay, so there's couple 500 feet of runway to the left of us here.
Yes, there is runway behind the airplane. Yes.
A lot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you know what? The other thing I can see right here, this airplane is still pretty far off the ground.
I did some measurements. This airplane is about 100 feet off the ground at this point. If we look back here, that is about 200 feet off the ground, roughly. The data readouts actually do go a little bit into the altitudes. it ends up not mattering that much for
Okay.
reasons that we're going to get into. So,
Good,
and
no, I don't.
well, airplanes are they're like any other, shoe. You like cars, for example. Cars are just energy. They're just applied physics. They are just energy, contained in an engine, and that is translated to the road via the drivetrain and wheels. Airplanes aren't much different. The energies involved are definitely greater, but that same basic principle of energy management is something that pilots are taught very, very early on. And you guys are going to, as we go through this, you guys are going to see why. So we will now click over to the very boring, very dry Transport Canada article. Is this big enough for you guys?
I can see it.
Yeah.
All right. So this would be the they call it the TSBC. There's the actual investigation number. Yes, this is a preliminary report. It was released March 20th of this year. Don't need to read that, the summary, because we're going to get into it. Key points that I want you guys to focus on. The captain was seated in the left seat as per custom and was the pilot monitoring. So we don't use captain and co-pilot in the aviation industry anymore. We use PM and PF. Pilot monitoring, pilot flying. Pilot monitoring, his job is to be 5 minutes ahead of the airplane. He's planning the next move. He's talking to air traffic control. He's got charts and he's doing fuel management. The pilot flying's job is to fly the plane, manage energy, make sure the airplane is on course, make sure the airplane is performing as necessary. So the first officer was seated in the right seat and was the pilot flying. She, and it is a she. We all know this. This was reported in the press. I'm not going to go prove it here. She was in physical control of the airplane per standard training techniques on landing. That means she had one hand on the flight controls, one hand on the throttles. And I'm building up to something here because that's important. The fact that by training, she's supposed to have one hand on the flight controls, one hand on the throttles. She's supposed to be managing the airplane's attitude and energy. Okay. It was, and this is where the scapegoating is going to start. The people involved are going to be desperate to blame the wind because there was a wind. Okay. We have methods and procedures for dealing with that. In fact, here is the quote from the company flight manual. Like this is Bible as far as pilots are concerned. Right here. Final approach is flown at VREF. Don't worry about what VREF is. Plus 5 knots. When operating in gusty wind conditions, as was the case that day, the winds were 23, gusting up around 35 knots, if I recall correctly. Later on in this document, they actually do talk about what the wind conditions were. Increase VREF by half the gust factor, not to exceed 10 knots indicated airspeed. Okay. On the current flight, the flight crew set the speed bug to VREF plus 5 or 144. And given the reported wind gusts, the approach was flown at 149. And as we can see, the aircraft is doing 150, 149. Honestly, close enough, right?
Yeah.
Everyone was freaked out about the ground speed. Airplanes.
Immaterial.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Why was it moving so slow? Well, this tells you what the wind speed was, 29 knots. That's all it tells you, right? That's it. The ground speed doesn't matter. Here's another key factor. We use something called N1. N1 is just a fancy term for the speed of the big fan in the front of the engine that you can see. Okay. And that might be, it's one of the two. There's N2, which is the hot section revolution speed, and we mostly don't pay attention to that. So 64% N1. You could call it 64% thrust. This is pretty typical when you're landing. You're trying to kill airspeed. You're trying to get down on the ground. You don't want to carry too much thrust. Now, 64% is probably more than you would need for, say, a no wind landing, right? So, okay, so they're doing it right. They've got extra thrust on. They've got extra speed on. The rate of descent. By the way, rate of descent is going to be the key factor here. 720 feet per minute is a little fast, but not much. Certainly not enough to even damage the aircraft. 5 seconds later, the pilot flying disconnected the autopilot. This is pretty normal. You're going to be doing last minute jostling to keep the airplane on center line and on glide slope. And it was windy, but the visibility wasn't particularly bad. I mean, you guys could see as that airplane flew down the runway that, you could just see the airplane keep going in the video. Yeah, that's what it was. Okay.
Hey, I want to say something. 720 feet per minute. That's like 12 feet per second.
Yeah, roughly. Yeah.
Okay. What's the gravity? What, 32 feet per second?
Yeah, something like
If you
that.
drop a ball. So, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not excessive. And then you kind of typically feather it out at the end.
Via flare. Yeah, that's what we call the flare.
You flare it. Yeah. Okay. Flare it out. So, okay. I just want to put that in perspective. 720 seems like a high number. Yeah. Okay. I agree with you. It's not really that high.
Yeah. And it's key to remember that this is an accident that takes place in less than a minute. And we're talking feet per minute here, right? So feet per minute and thrust settings, this is going to be the key to the whole accident. And as we step through this document, you're going to see that something happens. Okay, so 29 seconds later, well, the aircraft was 153 feet AGL. The airspeed increased to 154. Now, this means that it got a little fast. This is not uncommon in gusty conditions. You get a big wind gust comes through, your indicated airspeed will go up even as your airspeed over the ground goes down. But as far as the wing is concerned, indicator is the only one that matters. So the pilot flying pulled back on the thrust levers, and as a result, over the following 5 seconds, N1 decreased from 64% to 43%, where it remained until touchdown. Remember how I said the accident has actually started before the accident, before the crash? This, where it remained until touchdown, as we're going to see in a little bit, is where the accident actually happened. Naturally, you reduce power, airspeed will decrease. We expect this. Okay. Stepping through 10 seconds later. Okay, 3.6 seconds for touchdown. This is where they're 50 feet above ground. So if you remember that video, they've already flown past that plane. Okay. EGPWS is a system. It's a downward facing radar that's highly accurate, tells us on big jets how far we are above ground. So you see that. 1 second later, 2.6 seconds before touchdown, the EGPWS yells out sync rate. Now, this is a very loud alarm. It is designed to get your attention. And this close to the runway, there is what we call memory items. But really, it's just what you're supposed to do the moment you hear it. If I hear sync, my hands are moving by the time rate comes out. Okay. So you hear sink rate. Now, why is it complaining about sink rate? Well, this right here. Rate of descent increased from 700 to 1100. And this is in the span of 15 seconds. So it didn't hit them entirely. It didn't hit them like that second. This sink rate had been going on for a while. And then the engine thrust was steady at approximately 43. Okay. Here's where I have to stop. That sink rate alarm is designed to get your attention. Okay. Because as a pilot, when you see that or hear that indication, the very first thing you do is you slam the throttle forward. I don't care what plane you're flying. I don't care what your training says. It should be instinct. You hear it, you see it, you feel it, you slam the throttle forward.
And you abandon the landing and you say, screw this, I'm going around.
Well, that's exactly. Now, a bunch of very nerdy people will come in and they will say, aha, but it takes 3 to 5 seconds for a aircraft to generate power. Well, no. It does take time for a jet engine to spool up. However, it is the power it's generating increases as it spools up. It takes 5 seconds to go from idle to full thrust. Okay. That's what that actually means. If the moment she heard sink rate, she had 3 seconds, 2.5. Okay. Would the airplane have hit the ground? Yeah, probably. It still wasn't generating enough thrust, but it would have hit the ground softer. Probably would have smacked the landing gear. Would the passengers be annoyed? Yeah. You would feel it, you would know it. But I've seen plenty of aborted landings where the landing gear touched the ground. Like this is not uncommon. I watch those streams where there's those guys who they all they do is they stream landings, and I'm just watching the pilots do their work, and it's nice background noise. Okay, and occasionally you'll see one where they smack the ground, but the throttles are, the power's coming back on, and they take off and they try again.
Hey, in training, do pilots do something called a touch and go?
That will be on your first flight, yes.
So if the landing gear touches the runway, you've already experienced, oh, yeah, comes down, touches, I can still take off again. Okay. It's nothing unusual here. Nothing they haven't experienced.
Correct. The other thing that I want to state here, remember about that distinction between pilot monitoring and pilot flying.
Right.
There's 2.6 seconds that this whole thing, from sink rate to smacking the ground, right? The pilot monitoring, yes, he's the captain. Yes, he has legal authority. Yes, she screwed up. And yes, he is going to take the blame for it.
But there's not enough time for him to do crap.
There's not enough time for him to do anything because he's not touching the controls. In fact, by it's not law, but by regulation, there can only be one pilot touching the controls at a time. We even have this special litany that we go through. I have the plane, you have the plane, and then that confirms the transition of handoff. But there's some exceptions for like flight training and stuff. But in general, this guy will not have had his hands anywhere near the controls. So what these people are asking is, oh yeah, he's supposed to react. His brain is thinking about, oh, I need to be programming the radios for ground. What's the gate? What's the route we're going to get? Remember, his job is to be 5 minutes ahead of the airplane. So his brain is not, yeah, he's watching the landing, but he's not anywhere in a position to rip the controls out of her hands and do the right thing. 2.6 seconds. You have to ram the throttles the moment you hear sync. Okay, that's it. That's the hard truth of the situation. This is on her and her alone to get this right. She does not, because the engine thrust never changes. From that decrease to the moment of impact, it never changes.
So which indicates freezing.
She froze. That's my opinion.
That's what it
Again,
indicates.
that's how that's how I read this. Now, of course, there will be interviews that the interviews are not part of this document. She did survive. Both of them survived, actually. Everyone survived. Thank goodness. But there was a document put out. There's another thing that I want to get to where they talk in here later about, oh, here's a picture of the crash afterwards, missing a whole wing. This is what we call a hull loss. This aircraft will be an insurance write-off. So,
I noticed one other thing.
Go ahead.
It showed bank angle up there. Started out at 5.6 degrees. Then I went to 7.1 or 5.9 to the right. Okay, scroll down.
Well, it actually started 4.7, 5.9.
5.9. Okay, what's the next? 7.1. 7.5.
At point of impact.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Not only was she not increasing the throttles, she wasn't actually using her yoke to correct the bank angle.
This is yet another piece of evidence in my assertion that she froze.
Exactly. That's the conclusion I came to.
Right. So,
because she wasn't correcting, she wasn't correcting it. And no, nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got the picture, personnel information. Captain, 3,500 hours of flight time. That's about normal for these regional airlines. It was his first flight. It was his first flight of his first day in 7 days. And he was an instructor. Or he was an instructor pilot, and his prior 3 days of work had been instructing, which means that this captain was very well rested. Rest is not going to be a factor on his part. Okay. When you're working simulator, you get to work a normal 9 to 5 schedule. So right. He was sleeping. He was sleeping well, because everyone's going to say, "Oh, well, that was another one. Were they tired?" Okay. Now this is where things get really DEI, and we need to go do a little bit of reading on some CFRs here. So for the ATP,
what's a CFR?
CFR, U.S. Code of Federal Regulations. This is the actual law. I said we were going to read some law.
It's kind of small.
It's kind of, okay, we can make it bigger. So they're talking about training requirements and, like things you have to know. Oh, so this is the training for what we call an ATP, airline transport pilot. In order to fly a jet a commercial jet in the United States, even as a first officer, you need to have one of these. So this applies to everyone. Okay, so we're talking about knowledge, training requirements, flight proficiency here. Just things that you have to have. And then let's see if I can find it. There is a minimum. Let's see, I found it once. See if I can find it again. Okay. It's actually up here. Okay. Airplane category rating. A person who is applying for an airline transport certificate with an airplane category and class rating must have at least 1,500 hours of total time as a pilot. And it goes into the various things you need to have. In order to get your ATP, you have to have 1,500 hours. But
Right.
wait. She only has
Why is it
14.
below?
Well, but it gets more interesting. She had already had 418 hours on the CRJ 900. How on God's green earth did she get into the flight deck of a CRJ with 1,100 hours?
No, 1,004 hours.
1,004. Oh, okay. Yes, Steve, you got me. My math was just a wee bit off. She was also she was on day now. She was probably fatigued because she was on day 5 of a 5-day week, and this was her first flight of the day. Or no, this was her second flight of the day. She started in Cleveland, flew into Minneapolis, and then this flight departed Minneapolis, and she had 1 hour and 40 minutes in between. So she probably was tired. Okay. But I want to focus on this part here. I just said that you need to have 1,500 hours. But she had, as Steve rightly pointed out, 1,104.
1,004.
1,004. Well, it turns out that there is a way. Airplane category restricted privileges. A person may apply with a minimum of 1,000 hours if the person holds a bachelor's degree in an aviation major, completes 60 semester credit hours of aviation coursework, and then it goes on to describe the other actual training. So, because she held a college degree, he gets to fly on 1,000 hours of experience, on 1,000 hours of flight time. I'm not going to call it experience because hours do not equal experience, but.
Oh.
Well, she's good with paperwork.
Well, how many times have you been on Twitter and somebody's talking about credentialism and its relationship to DEI?
Oh, yeah, all the time. And it's also related to even seminary training and the people who are supposed to think. And now that's getting thrown back in their faces, which is kind of good. So,
well, she got into the right seat of a jet that can hold 70 some odd people because she has a bachelor's degree. Gentlemen, I present to you DEI in its most fatal form. They can kill you in job lots now.
and this doesn't
Our
matter.
credentials.
In its face, this doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. It's just the fact that credentials over experience.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Credentials do not equal experience or competence.
Correct.
Okay. Now, she worked for an airline called Endeavor Air. I hate to do this to you guys because I'm actually really a big fan of airlines in general. But let's just go take a look at their careers page, shall we? This is today. This is active. What do you guys notice?
DEI.
Yeah. These are happy people. That's what I notice.
Steve, what else do you notice? Is that
they like women because they're
okay?
promoting women to be able to do this. And yeah, minorities. It's a great place to navigate your career.
Now, to be fair, these pictures are obviously of ground staff, not pilots, but you can tell a lot about what the company is valuing by who they put on the front page of their hiring page.
I thought we're not supposed to judge a book by its cover.
Yeah, well, I'm judging the book by its fucking cover. Well, but am I though? Because there's a reason I just spent the past half an hour dragging people through this document. On paper and according to the regulations, this person was fully qualified to be in that seat. And at 420 hours or whatever, 418 hours in that type of aircraft, working, her base was Minneapolis. I guarantee you this was not the first time that she had seen adverse conditions, high winds, etc. She knew what to do.
It happens.
Yes. Now, it happens to men too. But one of the things that we know from studies that we're not allowed to talk about anymore is that women freeze at a much higher rate than men do.
Isn't there like a motor skills function that's faster in men than women
Yes, there is.
in general? Yes.
Men are also better at seeing movement out of their peripheral vision than men are. Men also have better night vision. Not a factor in this one, because obviously this was daytime. But Tacticus, you mentioned Rebecca Lobach. And you mentioned Rebecca Lobach and the helicopter crash. Yeah. Okay. That's nighttime crash. And that was done under the conditions themselves. The weather conditions were pristine. You could not ask for a better day to fly or anywhere. But her conditions were adverse because she was operating under night vision, which takes already difficult nighttime conditions and makes them much worse. The image is flat instead of dimensional. It's stuff like that. It's very likely that because there were two airplanes that were one was 6 miles behind the crash airplane, but the way the geometry, it would have looked like it was much closer. And so she very likely picked up on the wrong one. That's what they think happened. But that's easy to do in these adverse conditions. They also, based on what I've seen so far of that one, think that it was her instructor pilot that actually, because the helicopter had just started to turn away. They think it was the instructor pilot with her that actually did that turn. Shu, I agree with you. The question I have for you, and this is a serious question. This is a question to all of our audience. Yes, they should hire on merit. And if they did, the number of pilots would collapse. Because all of pilots right now everything about merit is determined by this document. This is subpart G. It's different for commercial ones, but for airline pilots, this right here, Title 14, Chapter 1, subpart D, Part 61, subpart G. That whole mess. If you can meet these requirements, you are considered qualified to handle people behind you. I have made arguments to the elsewise that we should not be doing this way at all. And I have had airline pilots get in my face and tell me that I'm wrong and that I just don't understand. And ours is the gold standard of experience, and there should be no other requirements placed on, I've met some pretty unhinged pilots. Pilots also, I hate to say this, trend liberal as a group. So there's a part of me that wonders if. Go ahead.
I've got a question to ask them to really set them off. Yeah, they did a lot of investigation here, some data. But where was this female pilot at in her menstrual cycle when the plane crashed?
They will not ask nor disclose that if they did.
Does the performance, behavior, thought process of women vary over the course of a month based on where they're at in their cycle? Do women get more emotional at certain times and less able to process information? I'm just asking because I'm just some dumb guy from North Dakota.
I can assure you that absolutely no studies have been done on female performance on certain times of the month, and likely never will. So I want
we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know, and I wanted to. I thought it would be interesting to do a detailed walkthrough of this document and build the case that I think is what happened. Now, this isn't I think. On the basis of the evidence presented so far by the TSBC, this screams to me, she froze. And people are going to say, oh, men freeze too. They do. At a far lower percentage rate than women do. I'm sorry if
and the
people
Bible
don't like
talks
that.
about, this kind of shows that stuff in the Bible too about people, soldiers becoming like women free,
Yeah.
There's something else here that hasn't been captured. There had to be a reason she froze. That's not listed here. Something out of the ordinary caused her to freeze, if that in fact is what happened. And pretty much everything about the landing kind of seems like it was within somewhat normal parameters, not excessive in any way, not
Until
out of her experience, until the alarm went off.
Right there. I have it highlighted on the screen.
Startling, right?
Sync rate.
The sync rate triggered something, and then she possibly froze at that moment.
We don't have the final report. That'll take about 2 years. And I will be very curious to read it to see if they actually what they actually blame it on. This is Canada. So
pilots train to land and hear that sync rate and then what to do when they hear it?
Yes, that would be part
of it. Do they practice that in a simulator?
Yes, that would be a mandatory part of her training, both primary, and it would be considered. So obviously, as she's going up to the CRJ, she's going to get a ton of training in all the procedures and whatnot for that aircraft. And then every, want to say 6 to 9 months, it depends on a number of different rules. She's going to go back in for recurrent training. That training tends to focus entirely on emergency situations, not how to fly the aircraft. They kind of assume you can at that point. So sync rates are considered mandatory training. It's a critical alert on what we call short final. So I'll guarantee that she had that at some point in her training history, at least once, if not more than once.
So the training anticipates people can get jarred and startled when this alarm goes off. And so we better train them on this so they don't freeze, because they understand. Someone who put together the training says, yeah, okay, we want them experienced with this. So when the alarm happens, they know what to do and they don't freeze.
Yes. Some of the ways that we train pilots today are based on outdated methodologies. The military actually does a much better job of it in general. And I say that knowing that we have to go talk, that we have to say, okay, yeah, and there's Rebecca Lobach over here who just kind of screwed up. But the military actually, particularly special forces dudes, it is very difficult to get somebody to run towards the sound of gunfire. It's even more difficult to get somebody to run through a door that they know gunfire is going to be coming out of. And the special forces dudes have come up with training that can convince a normal human being to do that, to work through every single possible startle reflex, every single possible what's the term? Just that self-preservation drive that humans have. The special forces guys have figured all this out. But the problem is, and I have actually spent some time working out what a pilot should actually go through to be allowed in the flight deck of a plane. Because I can take a pilot with 500 hours of solid training, wall to wall, and in what they get trained in, and they will be far safer on the flight deck than this lady was at nearly 1,500 hours. Hours don't matter. What's your skill set? What situations have you been put in and put through? That's what matters. But the problem is, if we put women through that, most women would not be able to handle it. Hell, most men would not be able to handle it. And that's why I was asking, are you willing to suffer the consequences of losing a significant portion of your pilots?
So are you implying that this training that you would put them through is stressful?
Extremely so, physically and mentally.
And therefore, you seem to also be implying that men are more capable at handling stressful situations than women. A lot of men would wash out, but a much greater percentage of women would wash out.
Correct. And women already only make up about 6 to 8% of pilots. And so with the DEI charge, we have to up our numbers. There is an extreme push throughout the system to get women in, because so few women will select for this career as it is. And so
if you're training this 500-hour theoretical training program, what percentage of men who are pilots or learning to be pilots, what percentage of men would wash out, fail that?
Easily 75.
75%. Wow. Which probably means that over 95% of women would wash out.
Something like that. There are women who could do this.
Obviously, yeah, I fully agree.
There's a famous name, Patty Wagstaff. She's an aerobatic pilot. I already know she can do all of this because I've seen her do it at air shows. Right? That, like, she can handle the physical and the mental. She does it on display at air shows around the country. There are not many Patty Wagstaffs available to choose from for your DEI programs.
This reminds me of something about Boeing we talked about, but that might be something else.
Are you
You have
reading
that
my
lined up?
tabs here?
No, we talked about this half a year ago, briefly.
Yeah, well, the narrative continues. So
Mm.
I think I've made my point here specifically, but so we've kind of been talking about the equity part of DEI, right? We've all women are always equal in every respect to men, right? And
Uh,
So, so these airplane dudes, the guys who make it, do they think about airplanes all the time? Do they just nerd out about airplanes? Are they obsessive about
yes,
learning about
yes.
airplanes? Do they talk about it all the time? Is it like, hey, buddy, get a life? It's not all about
yeah.
airplanes. Now,
Thanks, Nick.
do do female pilots nerd out about airplanes too?
I have actually talked to a few who have. There are a
But
few.
is that's kind of the exception.
Oh, yes.
I would say when men do a job, they learn everything about it and they can rattle off facts and they can talk about what they do for hours, bore the tears out of anybody who's not into it. Talk to a truck driver, he'll talk to you for hours about the engines and the, 13 speed, 10 speed, these automatic trains. He'll just go on and on and on about, and then stories about what he did. Women, it's a job. They don't just nerd out about it. They don't have the passion that shows up in living, breathing, thinking about their occupation the way a man does. That's my observation.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, Steve. At my flight school, I was one of the fastest pilots through the program that had ever been through their program when I was getting my licenses. And I know this seems morbid, but you guys are Shu actually brought it up, air disasters. There's a TV show that's been called either Mayday or Air Crash Investigations. I watched every one of those while I was in flight school. And then once I had watched them, I would actually go I would pull up the NTSB docket on that crash and go read what actually happened. By the way, Air Crash Investigations is a highly, yeah, thanks, right? Thanks, Nick.
We're all nerds here. It's okay.
But that's me. Like it wasn't good enough for me to say, oh, I know how to fly an airplane. I wanted to go learn what mistakes people made and then try to teach myself how to not make them, which meant I did strange things as a student that people looked at me and they go, why the hell would you ever do that? Well, I can tell you exactly how much ice a 182 can carry on its wings, and it's way more than you think it is. I don't ever want to do that again, but I know I can if I have to. Right? It's stuff like that.